Thank you so much for joining us on the GFC podcast. You can hear each week's sermon on this channel, but we're also bringing you material from the cutting room floor, as it were, because there's always more to say than there is time to say it. And in fact, we're going to have a special episode today where we don't actually talk about the sermon, but something specific to our guest here. Some of you may know him, but my name's Patrick. I'm one of the pastors on staff, and I'm joined today by our lead pastor, Matt Murphy, who just got back from a sabbatical.
That's right.
So we're going to talk about what in the world a sabbatical is.
Yes.
And all the things that you did at that time. And for those who don't know, our elders at GFC put in place this rhythm where senior leaders every 4 years get a 6-week sabbatical. And so we're going to unpack that experience and what that looks like, because people do spend sabbaticals doing different things. Some may want to write a book or do some processing on leadership. Others may just want to rest and renew and go fishing or whatever. So we'd love to unpack some of that if you're up for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So what, like your kind of goal for the sabbatical, what was that for you?
Well, the goal of the sabbatical at GFC, that the elders kind of put in place, you mentioned that a few years ago, it's really rest and renewal. So it's different than a vacation. Vacations tend to be high pace, high activity. The purpose being rest and renewal. For me, at least, it meant a lot of slow days, a lot of solitude. Not a whole lot of planned activity, though there was definitely some of that. But I did a lot of different things throughout the 6 weeks.
Okay, so you didn't have like a spreadsheet where it's like, okay, for these next 30 minutes.
No.
Okay.
That would defeat the purpose.
All right.
I did have a Word doc ahead of time with
did.
Ideas.
I bet you did.
But it was not finely tuned
to
30-minute blocks.
Okay. So when you got into it, how did you actually end up spending, your time? Obviously it wasn't all the same, but...
Yeah. Now, the first part of it, for me, it was really trying to get quiet and eliminate noise. I had a lot of solitude. I limited technology. I read some books, and I did a spiritual retreat, which was really fun.
Okay.
The second part of the sabbatical, the kids were out of school, so, this part was a little more noisy, slightly, but still slow. I had mornings where I didn't even set an alarm, and I can't remember the last time I did that. And a lot of relaxed days with family. We did some fun stuff. I went on a weekend trip with our kids to a water park. And so we did some fun family stuff. And then the last part of the sabbatical, we went to Texas and spent some time in Tyler, where I grew up, and then in Dallas, where my sister lives. I remembered how hot Texas was.
Beautiful this time of year.
Beautiful and dry and hot and flat. But, it's a great place. And then we went to Six Flags. So we did some fun stuff while we were there, too. And now I'm back.
Okay. Yeah. So what was it like for you just in overall? The experience of the sabbatical?
Yeah, it's interesting in processing, trying to get ready to answer that question, because I knew I was going to answer that question a lot. The short answer is it was really good. So I'm passing somebody in the hallway, hey, how was the sabbatical? And the answer is good. I think if people are curious, the deeper dive, there's really 3 words I would use to sum it up. So the first is restorative. For me, when I slowed down, I realized how tired I was, and I think that's probably true for many of us when you finally slow down. And so, like I said earlier, there are days of physical rest, but for me, there's also just emotional and spiritual rest. The image I had going into the sabbatical in my mind was from the Sabbath year in Leviticus, I believe. You do a lot of reading in Leviticus. You were there this morning.
My favorite. It's the only place I go, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
I am impressed. Yeah. So there's this idea of the Sabbath year where Israel was commanded to let the land lie fallow, not do any work during the Sabbath year. And for whatever reason, that was in my mind as an image for me to not do any work, even spiritual work, even writing or thinking about what to preach, but really just to let the land lie fallow. And it was really restorative. It took a couple weeks for my internal operating system to slow down.
Okay.
But then there was really a lot of rest. So restorative, the second word I'd use is challenging. It's very abrupt going from high pace and high noise into a sabbatical. And solitude, silence, and stillness is hard. I mean, it's good, but it's hard. And it's not just because we get bored. It's also disruptive. I wanted to read a quote. This is one of the books that I read on my sabbatical. Called The Way of the Heart by Henri Nouwen. But he has this great quote, and this resonated with me. He says, "In solitude, I get rid of my scaffolding. No friends to talk with, no telephone calls to make, no meetings to attend, no music to entertain, no books to distract, just me, naked, vulnerable, weak, sinful, deprived, broken. It is this nothingness that I have to face in my solitude. And he says, it's so dreadful that everything in me wants to run to my friends, my work, and my distractions so that I can forget my nothingness and make myself believe that I am worth something. But then he says, but that is not all. As soon as I decide to stay in my solitude, confusing ideas, disturbing images, wild fantasies, and weird associations jump about in my mind like monkeys in a banana tree. Anger and greed begin to show their ugly faces. I give long, hostile speeches to my enemies and dream lustful dreams in which I am wealthy, influential, and very attractive. Thus I try to run from the dark abyss of my nothingness and restore my false self in all its vainglory. And he goes on about, the key is to persevere in solitude. But I read that quote just to, share with you. I mean, that was part of my experience. And it's not just this peaceful bliss. There is so much compulsive energy inside of us, at least inside of me, that when you stop, all of this stuff comes up to the surface. But, if you do stay with God in it, you're really drawn into a place of intimacy that you can't, get elsewhere. So I would say restorative, challenging, and then the third word I've kind of used for my sabbatical is just illuminating. Slowing down to reflect, and you get enough distance from how you normally live your life that you just get a new perspective. I started a note on my phone towards the end, and I'll just read you part of it. And I simply just said less and more. So I said, I want to live when I get back from this with less clutter, more margin, less multitasking, more monotasking, less podcasts, which that's funny. This is nothing wrong with podcasts.
Are we done?
No,
Okay.
Let's not be. But, for me, I listen to so many podcasts. So less podcasts, more reading, more prayer, more sleep, more friendship. So you just get a new perspective, I don't know how else to say it. And even on work, on church, I mean, I think that, one of the things you realize when you get away is that it goes on. I mean, church goes on without you.
Yes.
And my life went on.
Yeah.
And, it just gives you a new perspective, but it helps you realize you are not what you do. And we talk about that a lot, that our identity is found in Christ. It's not in what we do, but it's another thing to stop working and be faced with that reality.
Right. Yeah.
And I heard great things here. I mean, I heard that God worked in amazing ways. You did a great job of leading, Patrick. And so it really is just a helpful reminder that, God's working in the church. It doesn't depend on anybody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like it's, that extended sabbatical is like a picture of just Sabbath, every single week. It's a reminder that even though we're not doing the work, the world still spins. Things still happen. Everything carries on the way it is, and it's a good reminder and a needed reminder, I think, for all of us. I did have less meetings while you were gone.
You did.
I did,
and you enjoyed that.
Yeah. It turns out you are the cause of all of my work.
No, that's not true.
I
just remind you, you took the job.
I did gladly. Gladly. No, it's good. And I think for us too, just as a staff, and it was a reminder. You can be gone, or I could be gone, or anyone could be gone, and everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Everybody knows what they're called to do, even all these people behind cameras and stuff that people can't, hear and see right now. But so it's just a testimony to good leadership and a good structure. And so we all appreciate the fact that the elders, put that in place and let it happen. So you're talking about some of the words you used to describe it. What about some of your takeaways? I am curious. Although I would say, I want to make sure everybody heard that he said it was illuminating, not that he's now part of the Illuminati.
Yeah, that's
That
good
is one,
to
I just wanted to
clear that up. No, I was, but that was a long time ago.
Long time. Good.
Yeah,
You've recovered.
that was before I came to Jesus.
All right. So takeaways.
All right. So 3 takeaways I'll share with you. One of them is the indispensability of the desert. And I don't mean Texas, but the desert to meet with God. I did some reading about the desert fathers and mothers of the 4th and 5th centuries in Egypt who basically fled to the desert to live a monastic kind of life. And Henri Nouwen writes about them in The Way of the Heart. And they talk about how vital solitude is. It's really fascinating. And Henri Nouwen, he talks about solitude. It's not a private therapeutic place, but a place of conversion where the old self dies, the new self emerges. And he says that without solitude, it's virtually impossible to grow in the Christian life. Have you ever heard that quote or that idea?
That idea, yeah.
Yeah, and so, one of the things that coming back out of the sabbatical for me, I don't want to live without that same connection to the desert, so to speak. I mean, I spend time with God daily. I strive to do that. But I think even more, I just feel a desire and a need to make sure that I am fleeing to the desert, so to speak, to be with God throughout the day. And I'm trying to work on that. What does that look like? Different rhythms for me. I mean, one thing, just a small example, I've decided that walking is for talking. I walk with my dog every day, and I'm not going to listen to podcasts or do anything but just try to talk with God or call and talk to other people, friends, family, etc. But just trying to find times during the day to be present to God. Because I don't know about you. I mean, for me, I can go a whole day and not really truly stop and listen and be attentive to the presence of God.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like when I first started a little over a year ago, I had meetings and they were scheduled with very little time in between. And I had to go back to Caitlin, who helps make my schedule, and say, hey, I'm going to need like 15 minutes just to breathe, relax, and then kind of pray and prep for the next thing and the next person and whatever it is. So it's easy to do, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Like, it's really easy to go through the day and just not think heavenward, if you will. So yeah, that's good.
And part of that too, it's not just that being with God, solitude, whatever you call it. It's not just that being with God is vital for growth. It's also vital for ministry. I mean, what you and I do. I mean, one quote that stuck out to me from the books I was reading is that ministry can only be fruitful if it grows out of a direct and intimate encounter with our Lord.
Yeah.
And I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's why Jesus says, abide in me, and apart from me, you can do nothing. 1 John 1:1, John, he says, that which was from the beginning, which we've heard, which we've seen with our eyes, which we've looked at and touched with our hands, this we proclaim. Yeah. And there's a sense in which all of us who do proclaim, Jesus, we need to see him, we need to experience him, be with him in order for that proclamation to be grounded. Yeah. So I just think that's crucial.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And that's true for all ministry, not just preaching.
Absolutely.
Although I do think there's something particular to preaching. There's a prevalence of people that just copy and paste a sermon off the internet and present it as their own. And you can tell when that's done because it's not coming out of that person's own relationship with the Lord, whether that's struggling or feelings of victory or whatever it may be. And so, just an encouragement to anyone and everyone, like, work out of that own relationship and connection to the Lord. That's good.
Yeah. So the first one, the indispensability of the desert. The second one, and you kind of touched on this in your comment, but one of the takeaways was for me was that I need more white space in my day. If you ever read a book or if you write, there's never text all the way to the edge of a page. There's always space between the text and the edge. There's a white space. It's a transitional space. And, this sabbatical was one big white space for me between chapters. But one of the realizations for me was that I need more white space, more margin in my daily life. So, I don't know about you. I usually go from one thing to the next. I'll finish a meeting. I'll pop in my AirPods, listen to a podcast on my way home. I'll jump out of the car. I'll run in. I'll talk to my kids. It's just a quick example. And something happens when we let there be space. Yep. And for me, a high achiever, active, I like to do. Sometimes this is hard, but when we let there be space, not only do we find time to be with God in that space, we also get more creative. Thoughts come up, et cetera. And so I've just done some thinking around that. There's actually a guy named Adam Fraser who wrote a book called Third Space, and he talks about micro transitions. Okay. And he talks about soldiers in the Army, special forces, how they have to transition from the battlefield to being present with their family. It's fascinating. Yeah. But, the Cliff Notes is, we can be intentional with these spaces between activities, and it makes all the difference. It helps us be more present, more poised. And so I'm just, trying to be more diligent about carving out white space in between stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's nice having the transition, and I think that's, like, I can't. First off, I don't know how you listen to a podcast on the way home. We live in the same neighborhood, like 4 minutes away. So
I listen on 6 times speed.
yeah, you're such
I'm
an
just joking.
such an Enneagram 3. Look what I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that need to disconnect and to just be present when I get home and not be thinking about whatever meeting I just came out of or whatever I was just studying. Or so I think that's huge. And then just even throughout the day, like you were saying, and I just read a book by Justin Early called The Common Rule, and one of its series of different habits, some weekly, some daily, but one of those daily habits is just prayer 3 times a day. So just like kneeling prayer, morning, noon, evening. I haven't done it, on any kind of regular basis, but just that space to just pause and remember who I am and whose I am. And I think there's something to that just for everyday life. So I like it.
Good. And then the third one that I was going to share is just the importance of being grounded in the love of God. And I mean, let's be real. We talk about this all the time. We preach about it. But man, this theme kept coming up for me over and over again. And I'll just read you one quick quote, which I think is really profound. This is from a book called Surrender to Love by David Benner. Have you ever heard of David Benner before?
No.
Well, I just thought this was really helpful. So he says this. He says, Christianity is the world's great love religion. The Christian God comes to us in love, as love, and for love. The Christian God woos us with love and works our transformation through it. In spite of the trivializing influence of romantic and sentimental views of love in Western culture, love is the strongest force in the universe. Only love can soften a hard heart. Only love can renew trust after it has been shattered. Only love can inspire acts of genuine self-sacrifice, and only love can free us from the tyrannizing effects of fear. And he goes on, but it's powerful because he says if you're not experiencing the love of God, not just knowing it, but if you're not experiencing it, then all you'll be able to offer to Jesus is obedience.
Yeah.
And obedience is good. But what he says is obedience is not enough. What God wants is surrender. Yeah. And the only way you really surrender is if you trust and if you feel loved. Yeah. If you know, in your heart that God is love and that he loves you. So several books kind of kept pointing me back. And honestly, I had some profound times of just reflecting and feeling like God was really meeting me in those times. And so just being grounded in love, I just think it is so crucial. We never get beyond it. You know? We never graduate from that class.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Brennan Manning has been huge for me in that area of love. And I wrote down, because I just read it again the other day, but you will only trust God to the degree that you know you are loved by God. And so that surrender doesn't come until you really just sit in the fact of God's love for you and know that it's not changing. And that's just hard to do. I think for some reason, again, it's part of the childlike faith that Jesus calls us to. But my kids never wonder, I wonder if Dad loves me, Sure. But I feel like we outgrow, just that simple, he really loves me, no matter what. So there's something beautiful to that and needed in our adult hearts, to come back to it. Yeah. So that's great. I'm glad you sensed that and felt that and responded to it. So
thanks.
Okay, so those are some takeaways. You touched on this some, but as you get back into GFC life and work and preaching and pastoring, what are some things you're feeling? How you doing? You excited about some stuff? You dreading anything? How's it feel to be back?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just excited mainly. I really just feel privileged to be a part of what God's doing at Grace Fellowship. And what I missed, and I mentioned this on Sunday, what I missed was the people more than the activities. I just think we've got incredible staff, which you alluded to, an incredible group of elders, and just so many amazing men and women of God in our church. Yeah. And I feel like being a part of this community is really unique and a great privilege. And I feel really excited about the future of GFC. I think that we are really poised for something special. Yeah. And I think a lot of people sense that. And so I'm just excited to see what God has for us. And I think one of the other things I feel is just dependent. I really hope as a church we can really lean into our dependency on God in this season, because for anything to happen, God's Spirit has to be the one to do it. And I'm also really excited about July 23rd. You know, we've never had a special baptism service before.
Yeah.
But we have so many people wanting to be baptized that we're actually going to dedicate a whole service to it to celebrate. And I
awesome,
can't wait for that. And then on August 6th, we have a Vision Sunday.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about where we are as a church, but really where we're going and what we believe that God has in store for us. And we don't do this very often. We're not one of those churches that does a Vision Sunday every year. I think the last one was 3.5 years ago. But me and the elders and the staff, we've talked, and we're really excited about where we're headed, and we want to talk about that on August 6th. So I can't wait for that. So go ahead and mark your calendars and plan to be here for that.
That'll be awesome. That's good.
And so yeah, I think mainly just excited. You know, truly. And it's great to relationally connect. I missed a lot of people.
Yeah. Who'd you miss the most?
Not you. Just kidding. I'm not going to say that. You're trying to trap me here. But really, we've got such a great community of people here, and it's just awesome to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. That's the thing I talk about the most because I just passed my 1-year anniversary, and that's it. It's just the same reason I wanted to come is the same reason I'm glad I'm here. It's the people, both on staff and in the congregation. So it's wild, man. It's great to love where you are and the people you're with.
1 year on staff for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that could be a whole podcast.
You were gone. So
I sent you a card before, though.
You
Admit
did.
It. I did.
You did. It was very sweet. I didn't. The hearts were fine, but whatever.
Whatever, dude. There's no hearts in that card.
No, and no candy either.
No candy.
Because you ate it all. Dude can eat anything he wants.
My kids eat a ton of candy. That's true. You're
mean,
jealous.
Okay,
You're jealous of my ice cream intake and my candy intake.
So let's be honest. We went and saw a movie the other day, and you've got your giant, the take-home bucket that you refill for popcorn.
Which I shared
Which you did share. This is great. And then you order an icy.
Yeah.
A soft serve icy drink. You're 12.
You're not like I'm 12. How many of you adults listening to this love ices? How many of you in the room? There's 3 people in the room. Raise your hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they all raised their hand.
Okay.
So you are the only one.
I just love the courage. You're just like, I don't care what the world thinks. I'm getting an icy.
I don't care. You're in a dark movie theater anyway. I'm like, judge me. I'm going to drink my icy and enjoy Indiana Jones. And I did.
It was awesome.
It was a good movie.
It was great. I thought we were going to have to throw down, though, when we went in and there were already people in our seats.
That's true. We had to kick them out.
Yeah.
But we did it in a kind way.
That's
yeah.
right.
That's right.
That's right. Blessed. Well, man, anything else just as we finish up and you're reflecting is
I'm curious for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask this, but what was the sabbatical like for you?
Good. I mean, I think it was good. Now that you're preaching too more regularly, just with our setup, the more often you preach, consecutively, the easier it is, I've found, to prepare. So you know where it's headed. You kind of know where from this week to this week, and you get in your rhythm and routine. So it was easier to prepare, which was great. And I enjoyed preaching and teaching, those 4 or 5 weeks, whatever I did. And we had fun in Judges, did some good stuff there. But I think that was great. And then it also, allowed me to check in with some of your, your direct reports. And so got to build even better relationship with staff, from that vantage point. So that was a gift that I wasn't expecting to come from that. So all good.
Yeah.
Just really enjoyed it. Yeah. Enjoyed their time, meetings, all the stuff that we did. And, we had a fun little staff meeting, last week, just welcoming you back, and did some top 10 list of what happened while you were gone.
Yeah,
so,
I'm glad none of those things actually happened.
None of those things actually happened. Well, I mean, none of them actually happened.
Yeah.
But I wish everybody out there could just hear the list and know the humor behind it. But
absolutely.
It was good.
Staff meetings are a ton of fun.
They can be. Yep. Well, thank you for sharing your takeaways and just part of that experience. And obviously, like you said, there's even more to process.
Yeah,
I'm sure there'll be more to come, that you'll share with people in the congregation as well, and staff that comes from it as you start just continue processing, thinking, and interpreting your experience even. So that's good.
Yeah.
I know the family's glad to have you back, so it's good.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Yeah.
Great to be back.
Yeah, good, man. Well, if you didn't catch the message on Sunday, Benjamin Cassoni, our global outreach pastor, preached. I'd love for you to check that out. You can do that at gfcnow.com/messages. Let us know what you thought about the podcast. You can send comments, questions. We would love to do some Q&A. So if any of those things come up as you're listening to a podcast or maybe to a message, we'd love to answer those. So you can email those to podcast@gfcnow.com. And if you would take 30 seconds to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review, only because there's not a 6-star review. So just 5 stars. And if you are new to GFC, we got to say it. If you could text the words "new here," one word, to 94,000, just follow those prompts. We'd love to connect with you, get to know you a little bit. We hope you have a great week and that you'll tune in next time.